Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Juliet Upabio Achibong, and I will be moderating the session for today. My background spans in international trade. I am a foreign trade representative, and I work in an export management agency. I also head the commercial desk in a business council, in a bilateral trade council. My concerns are usually in the spin of economics. My background is in economics and international relations, as well as international trade. Today, we are going to be discussing the topic, are young people tired of capitalism? I would say that in today's world, in fact, in 2020, where we have barely survived, this conversation, I find it very sensitive because a lot of people, especially the Sorosoke generation, they are clamoring for a change in every single thing. So we having this kind of conversation automatically puts them in the hem of our affairs. They need to understand what it takes. They need to understand how the economy runs. They need to understand the benefits of capitalism. They need to understand how capitalism came into place in the first place. And that's why we have this conversation. Today, I'm going to have three panelists who span across different areas and they have different perspectives. I want to explain something. That you don't agree with someone else's opinion does not make theirs less right. So it's very important that we open our minds when we have a panel of people like this, where people share different opinions and different perspectives. Because the truth is, you will pick something here that is not here. So whether you say that you like this or you like this, the truth is you can like this now, and you just don't know why it's that way. So you need to listen to someone else's opinion to see it's that way. I had a mindset before I spoke with the panelists today. But when I spoke with them this morning, I realized that I could have been stuck in my mindset. So I had to shift. And I had to say, okay, I might as well open my mind to learning. Everyone is right. Everybody has a point. That's the truth. Everyone has a point. So I would ask the guests today or the audience today to please open your minds. We're going to have a very interactive conversation. I think I'm not sure how this particular application works, but I'm sure that there's a place you can do question and answer. So I think that you should be able to put in your questions in the question box. And once we're done with the panelists, I will take questions. It's a very interactive forum today. There's no holding back. There are no there are no hinges anywhere. We're going to open everything. Oh, belly up. We still have one panelist who isn't here, and I am waiting for him. However, I'm going to dive since he's not here. So, in the coming age of the new generation, the world has seen new cultures, new ideas on success, economics, what wealth is, mindset shift, economic shift, and ultimately the demand for eradication of capitalism. Today, our speakers will be giving us three different angles to this rising concern. Most times, we are unable to relate to the current struggles of the generation much affected. I have Ms. Olagunju here to give us first-hand insight into the world of being affected by capitalism as a young person. Ms. Olagunju represents the Generation Z, is a professional in the marketing and communication field, and currently serves as a senior associate for client partnership with Red Africa. Okay, 1 minute, please. I think our last panelist is here. I just need to open the door, Pandora's box here. He has to come in.
No problem.
I can't even find his requests. Okay, well, I'm sure he'll come in at some point. If you give me a minute, I need to respond to him just to say to him that I have accepted his request. Okay. Sorry. So, Miss Olagunju, I need to hear from you what your challenges are for your generation. I know that it's an entirely new thing for you to come into a world where you're finding it difficult to leverage opportunities because this thing called capitalism has.
Hello?
And they're just taking over. Can you hear me?
I lost you for a bit.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, I lost you for a bit in your background.
Okay.
Yes.
But you can hear me now. You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Sound and clear? Okay, great. So I'm just going to take that again. I'm saying that we want to hear from you on your take, and I want you to tell us your angle, how this has, how capitalism has affected you in finding opportunities in today's market. What's your take on it? Why do you want it to stay? Do you want it to go? How has it affected you as a Generation Z?
Okay, thank you for that, Juliet. I think first of all, I want to start off with nothing too dreary, but I really feel like, especially being a young person today, not only just in Nigeria, across other African countries and globally, I feel like capitalism has failed a lot of young people today. The scary thing that I think about is that, when you're young, you think, oh, I want to grow up. I want to be able to create wealth. I want to provide more for my parents and all of that. I feel like in 2020 today, the trend for children to earn more than their parents has ended. Like, that's not a thing anymore. It feels like it's impossible to really be able to develop and grow wealth and create something for yourself in this kind of system that we're in. And personally, how I feel when we're saying capitalism, especially in the context of Nigeria, I don't think Nigeria is capitalist. I think Nigeria has deluded itself and its citizens into thinking that it's capitalist, because when we talk about capitalism, I'm thinking the freedom, a system that really enables freedom of choices, where people can choose where to invest, where to be able to convert capital into profit and all of that. That doesn't seem like it's possible in Nigeria. Because even if you're, as a young person, like, oh, I want to be able to grow wealth, I want to have a side business, I want to have an SME, I want to grow something, but then it feels very much like the environment, the system, everyone's out to get you. There's no supportive system out there whatsoever that can say, oh, it's a capitalist system where it encourages growth for people. There's no system in place for that. So I don't even feel like Nigeria is capitalist in the first place. And even when we say we are, it just feels very stifling as a young person growing up in Nigeria and just trying to hustle. Like, oh, you do your NYSC, you struggle through school with all the strikes and all everything. You do your NYSC, you get your first job. Like, oh, can I do a side business? Can I grow this? Can this bring wealth? No, there's so many things out there. It's we start to see more things. They start to introduce more fines and more things, and just so many things to push people down. And it feels like, as a young person, it's very easy to be like, well, this has failed us as a Nigerian. But then I'm also not one that's like, okay, let's destroy capitalism, because when it works, I feel like nobody wants to say, okay, don't give me choice. Government demand everything from me. No young person wants that. But the capitalism as a system itself, when it doesn't work, then we're all just deluding ourselves, because of course we want capitalism when it works. But if we're all stuck in a country where we say we're capitalist, but we know it's not capitalist, we know that no one's providing for us. Us young people just have to stick it through. I mean, thank God for the internet now, that we don't have to depend on the systems that we're stuck with. We can do business with people in India, do business with people out there, can at least grow something using the internet. But even then, it's still you see so many cases. I mean, I don't want to name any names, but you see some cases of young startups trying to make something, but then they introduce new fines, introduce new things to just push people down. And it feels like, I can understand young people wanting to destroy capitalism, saying no to capitalism, but then for me, I'm hoping to see what's the other answer. Because while I do not believe capitalism works in Nigeria, it's not working. I'm also not for socialism either, because I don't think government controlling everything in Nigeria is going to be our solution either. But that's where I am right now. I'm not destroy capitalism and fire all of that, but I just wish we had a system that worked, and right down to everything from a judiciary system that, oh, if I had a business and someone reneged on a contract, oh, I can sue this person. I know I can protect my business. I know that I'm able to grow. I don't think that's not there. It feels like, oh, I'm in the middle of the ocean on one plank. Oh, we're all just trying to swim in Nigeria as young people. But thank God for the internet. It's provided us mini boats that we go through. But yeah, that's my initial thoughts for that.
Okay, I see. So if I can quote you right, or if I do understand you, you are saying you don't have a problem if they're capitalists, if there's capitalism, as far as it works for you, it serves, it gives you opportunities. So if people want to take control of everything profitable in their society or in the economy, as far as they create opportunities for you, you are fine, right? That's your take.
It was a system that enables all Nigerians. Like, it doesn't matter where you went to school. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It's a system that encourages all Nigerians to be able to grow wealth in a capitalist society. But then we don't have that system, but we claim we're capitalists. Mm-hmm. That's my problem. It feels like we're capitalists, but then it's not working. We're lying to each other that we're capitalists when we're not. There's no freedom of choice here. there really isn't.
I like the part where you say we're lying to each other.
Well, it feels like that.
We're all being delusional in the theater. Okay. Thank you so much, Shekina. Can I call you Shekina? Yeah. Shekina, right? That's the pronunciation. Shekina. Oh, wow. I learned a new one now. Shekina. Okay. So in the whole conversation, there's the calm icing on the cake man to the whole thing. That's my delectable Mr. Abana right here. You can see him looking all nice, suited up, So Mr. Abana is with this. He isn't into socialism. However, he's seeking for a balance. And I think he's also, his conversation may also go towards what Shekinah has said. He seeks also for a balance, and he knows that capitalism would allow reforms if done properly. Mr. Abana is he's a global communications consultant. I had said I wasn't going to read his entire educational qualification because the man is it's a lot, man. It's a whole lot. But just know this man has several very recognized institutions in corporate communication, public affairs, marketing, international business as well. So I'm not going to read the entire profile, but I want to hear from him. I want him to share with us his approach, or his arguments, rather, his angle to why capitalism if capitalism should stay or if capitalism should leave, and if the young people have a valid reason to be tired of capitalism. Open floor, Mr. Osira.
Thanks, Julia. Thanks, Shekinah. Thank you, everyone who is part of this session. I'm happy to be part of this conversation. When you're introduced and the moderator talks about all your qualifications, it's a bit of a trap, because God help you if you don't deliver. People will go away thinking, oh, he's all qualifications and no content. I hope I hope that will not be the case. But the subject of capitalism is a very interesting one. In order not to make this an abstraction, I begin by just explaining in simple terms what capitalism is about. I know not everyone might have the economics background. So when we talk about the question of capitalism or socialism, fundamentally what we are asking is how much should the government do and how much should the private sector do? We all know about the factors of production, whether it's land, labor, or capital. Who owns what? Should the government own most of the capital and redistribute it so that everyone gets a fair share? Or do we let individuals own their capital with little or no government intervention? And the history of capitalism has been a long one. But the capitalism as we practice it now began in the 1970s, following the stagflation of the 1970s. For those who don't have an economics background, stagflation is a scenario where unemployment is high, but inflation is also high at the same time. Usually, if they should go in opposite directions. So from the end of after the end of the Second World War, we didn't have the kind of capitalism we have now. What we had was a mixed market economy where governments, we are stakeholders in organizing or owning the factors of production. You know, a lot of factories were owned by the government, the labor movements of England and so forth we hear about. You know, we are at the peak in those times. And the rate of inequality we have now wasn't so then, right? But when the stagflation of the 1970s hit, following the oil crisis of 1973, people began to look for new solutions. And a young man, not very young at the time, called Friedrich von Hayek and Milton Friedman, came up with a document that articulated the version of capitalism we have now, which is very much like Adam Smith's proposition, i.e., that the governments should not be in the business of allocating capital. The government should not own factories. Essentially, government should provide security, provide the rule of law, and let the private sector have its way. Let the market forces decide, which Adam Smith famously called the invisible hand of the markets. Demand and supply. If demand is high, prices, prices will go up and vice versa and so forth. However, that hasn't worked. It has worked for some people, but it hasn't worked for others. A presumption of capitalism is that the rising tide will lift all boats. When the economy is doing well, poverty will fall, government will create infrastructure, government will collect lots of taxes and so forth. In theory, this is how capitalism is supposed to work. The rich people will pay loads of taxes and the government will redistribute these taxes, give to poor people. But are rich people really paying their taxes now?
That's another discussion.
That's a big conversation to be had. But also, is the tide lifting all the boats? The fact is that a lot of the boats have holes in them. So the tide is lifting a lot of people up, a few people up actually, and a lot of people are left out. So we have a situation where if you look at the latest Oxfam report, a little over 2,000 of the world's billionaires are richer than 60% of the world's population, which is about 4.6 billion people. So capitalism is working, I agree, but working for who? That's the question.
For who?
Yeah. And I don't want to dominate the conversation. In the course of the conversation, I'm going to share further thoughts about how capitalism as it is should be fixed. But I'd like to say at the starting point that my position is somewhere in the middle. I believe that as with most things in life, common sense position is usually in the middle. If you find yourself at either extremes, then you really have to appraise your position, because this is not science. It's a social science, economic sciences, but it's not a question of 1 + 1 is always equals 2. There are always contextual factors you have to look at in economics. People who have been students of economics will know that one of the most famous phrases in economics is "it depends." So it depends on the country we are talking about.
True.
It depends on the type of capitalism. The last thing I'd like to say before I hand it over to my co-discussants is that there isn't just one kind of capitalism. When people talk about capitalism, what they are referring to usually is the liberal market economies, right? So in a nutshell, without going too technical, in the world, you have the liberal market economies and the coordinated market economies. The liberal market economies are the ones who say, let the market forces determine prices. There be little regulation. Government should hands off, little interaction between the government and the people. The government owns very little properties and so forth. But then you also have, and countries in this bracket, countries like the United States, countries like Great Britain and so forth. But you have the coordinated market economies who are also practicing capitalism, like Germany and lots of other countries in Europe, right? Netherlands and so forth. These markets have capitalism, but it's a sort of moderated capitalism. I'll give you a few examples. In Germany, most of the companies have the representatives of the unions on the board of directors. So the unions are parts of shaping the strategy of the organization. People are on the board to represent the interests of the unions and so forth. In countries like Germany, you can't just wake up and fire your employee. You have to go and have a conversation with the government. Why are you firing them? So it's not the case of on a whim, you just fire people, hire people, pay them peanuts. In Germany, to determine wages of workers, the government and the private sector will sit and have a conversation and look at the age, how much you are paying people, the range. So it's still capitalism in the coordinated market economies, but it's a version of capitalism that has a human face. I'll leave it here at this point.
I have my questions, but I'll keep them to the end.
Please write it down. I have my questions also because with the German structure, it's also very similar to what Nigeria tried to do with the Karma Act, of putting people on the board. Yes, it is what they're trying to do. Well, if they do it well, then it has a good purpose to it. But then, like Shekinah said before, it depends on where you are. Where are you? What country are you? This will determine the outcomes for everything. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the Mr. Emerem is here now. As much as the Generation Z seeks to eradicate, some other people seem to have a different view. And as you know, variety is the spice of life. We learn every day. Me, number one, I'm learning on this one. Mr. Ozioma is here to help us grasp all capitalism can offer us. Mr. Ozioma is a seasoned entrepreneur in sectors varying from energy to trade and finance. He's armed with a finance certification from a finance background, and his keen knowledge on working the numbers help us understand the benefits of capitalism and the mindsets we need to align if we want to grasp all the benefit that there is. So, Mr. Emerem, are you ready for me? Mr. Emerem, are you there? Oh, wow. He can't leave me now. Oh. Emerem, are you there? You need to answer me. Just put your hands in the air. Let me know you're there. I can't hear you. Are you trying to say something? No, he isn't actually. I think that he probably put the phone away or put his computer away and he didn't know. Well, he will come back on. So, okay, so I'm going to go back to us both again. I'm going to go to Shekinah. I think Shekinah, I want you to ask the questions that you wanted to ask Osita, so that it doesn't run off your head at this time.
Right.
So what questions would you want to ask Osita? Turning to what you said.
So you were talking about how capitalism across different countries and all of that. So I wanted to ask, what is the capitalism? How is that like in Nigeria? Because I believe that we're lying to ourselves that we're a capitalist society. So I would like to see, and we've tried a couple of things. The keyword in quotes here is try. What is it? What is the reality of capitalism right now in Nigeria?
Well, the version of capitalism in Nigeria is fashioned after the liberal market economies, like the US version and the UK version, where you leave most of these things to market forces. We used to have a lot of government intervention, but we then had a privatization policy, deregulation, and all of that. And what deregulation and privatization is about is allowing the free flow of capital, but also private sector ownership of the factors of production. Government-owned companies were sold to the private sector, as we all know, in the case of telecommunications And it's worked well in a number of areas. It's created jobs, at least for the telecommunications sector. It's helped provide a lot of people with phones. However, there's a question around how are the interests of workers protected in a liberal market economy? The system we operate in Nigeria is a system where your employer can cut your salary in half and nothing happens. Your employer can hire you on Monday and fire you on Thursday and nothing happens. There are no protections. Most companies don't have unions. In fact, some companies outrightly ban unions, which are supposed to represent the interest of workers. I'm not saying we should go copy and paste the German system. You know, Economics 101 tells you that there are various jurisdictions. So what works in America or Germany might not necessarily work in Nigeria. But I believe strongly that there are aspects of the capitalism practiced by these coordinated market economies like Germany, you know, that we should consider quote unquote copying. For instance, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't have representatives of unions on boards. I don't see how any company is going to lose, you know, by having the voice of the workers high at that level. So I think that to a large extent, the capitalism in Nigeria is left to the markets so much. I think there should be a bit of government intervention because most people don't have the same capabilities. I'll give you one example. Capitalism presupposes that most people are equal or most people can fight equally. In Nigeria, for instance, a person who goes to a super luxury, high fee paying private school in Ikoyi is different from somebody in a rural area, and they can compete. Capitalism is blind to that fact. Capitalism just says, send me your CVs, and we will judge your CVs by merit. But what exactly is this merit? When two people, you know, are like chalk and cheese in terms of the opportunities they've had in life. So all I'm saying is that we have to find a way to create more opportunities for people who are disadvantaged and forget this myth of market forces will decide. Forget this myth of let everybody come and compete, free markets, free competition, because everybody is not equal. In times when the public education system in Nigeria was solid, like in the 60s or maybe the 70s.
Wow, I wish I knew those
Yeah,
times.
you could have this competition. But the more the quality of public education falls, you find that people whose parents are not able to pay the astronomically high fees of the private schools are not able to compete. So you find the same set of people switching jobs, picking whatever jobs they want, moving from this organization to another, and others cannot join. One of the biggest drivers of social mobility is education. Your father could be a security guard, you get a good education, boom, you are the CEO of whatever blue chip company. Increasingly, that is not happening anymore. There is a high tendency for you to end up a security man, if not worse, if your father happens to be a security man. So that has been one of the downsides of the kind of capitalism we are practicing in Nigeria. Private sector organizations are not being held as accountable as they should. But secondly, social mobility almost does not exist because, you know, the quality of education in the public schools is not as good as it should be. And so you have people who are not armed with the same tools competing in the marketplace. And you're saying, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's also one of the biggest problems for young people today. That complete lack of social mobility. It's not like, oh, it's not what it is. It feels like it's not there because, like I said, like a lot of things we hear, like the reality, I speak a lot of young people. I'm young too, even in NYC, trying to say, okay, what's the future like? What kind of jobs can I get? Will I ever be able to end up to what my parents have or just be able to provide for my parents? Because it feels like the system we're in, it doesn't feel like I can ever get anywhere. Because even if like, oh, let me build something of my own, let me create wealth of my own, it doesn't feel like that's possible for me. Because even if I do, there's increasingly more fines, there's increasingly more very stifled community and environment for me. So that's my biggest problem with it, because I feel like that's something a lot of people are not looking towards too. Because as young people, it feels very frustrating, because it's like, even if you do the education, get the education, or you want to go to a school, then with all the strikes, after you finally get out, with all the chaos and all of that, you're doing NYC, you want to get a job, you want to build something. It just feels like there are more and more forces piling on, making it extremely difficult to be able to prosper. I mean, we hear success stories here and there, but I don't think that's a good measure to say that, oh, our economy works, so capitalism is working in Nigeria. Because the easiest question I would say is, how easy is it for a Nigerian youth, no matter where they are in Nigeria, or not even Lagos, or whether in Abuja, are they in Kano, how easy is it for them to actually grow wealth or whatever it is they want to do? How easy does the environment enable that for them? Because the capitalist environment support that. Because like you said, you mentioned earlier, capitalism is working great for the 4% or however small number of people who are benefiting from it. But from all the rest of us folks, we're left scrambling, and it's quite sad.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk.
Would you say that? Sorry, Mr. Osira. Let me ask this. Let me chip this in here. Over the couple of years, I have been very passionate about driving new thinking, driving economic shifts, because of my own experience as an entrepreneur. Most of the time, I realized that in a capitalist economic system that the world is at now, the onus lies on the entrepreneurs to make these changes that you see, that you need, actually. An entrepreneur is the one who has to make the change. Because if I say that I want to earn X naira from selling this pen, I need to decide if I want to sell quality or quantity. But most of the time, people just are focused on making the X naira than on selling the quality. And so you end up having, a very saturated marketplace. And that's why a young person would complain and say, oh, the capitalists have taken over. And then it's a no-who-no situation. It's a dog-eat-dog market. So I would say that, I don't know if you would argue correctly, if that would be correct to say, but Mr. Osira, would it be correct to say that the change that you seek, the balance that we seek for capitalism to work, lies in the mindset of the entrepreneurs? Would you say that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
One of the benefits of capitalism is that it drives competition. And with competition comes innovation. So if it takes you 10 naira to produce that pen, because you have loads of inefficiencies in your system, an organization that is more efficient will produce it at 5 naira, and it's good for the consumer, who then buys it at 5 naira. In economics, it's called optimality. So the optimal price. You don't want to be producing at a price that is inefficient, because it just adds on costs to everybody. So yes, there's a place for ingenuity for entrepreneurs to keep looking for more cost-efficient ways to produce, which is a plus for capitalism. But this presupposes that there's a level playing field for all entrepreneurs, right? Which was why I said yes and no. The truth is that in Nigeria, as it is in most countries, there are entrepreneurs who who banks are chasing to give them loans at very good interest rates, especially the big players. But you have entrepreneurs who cannot access capital. Capitalism, as the name implies, is about capital. Who can get the capital? If you don't get the capital, then we're not even talking about capitalism. It's about capital allocation. And when you look at how capital is allocated in countries, not just Nigeria, you find there's an asymmetry. The billionaires walk into the banks and dictate interest rates, and you are chasing them with the funds. So capital keeps flowing in the direction of the billionaires. Where the small business guy you talked about, who wants to produce a pen, cannot compete because he doesn't have the financial war chest a billionaire has. And he's not just fighting against the billionaire, remember? He's also fighting against importation. China is going to produce that pen at 1 naira.
1 naira.
And what capitalism says, when you hear deregulation, what it's talking about is free flow of capital, but also liberal market economies and capitalism hates stopping imports, you know. So when Nigeria had this phase of deregulation and all of that, they essentially stripped out most restrictions to imports. So the small stakeholder, the small business owner who is playing in Nigeria is not just competing with the Nigerian billionaire, but it's also competing with people in China. China is going to flood the market with 0.5 kobo pence, and a lot of small businesses are going to die. So capitalism drives innovation. If there's one thing I'll give to capitalism today, it's that it drives innovation. And one of the reasons it drives innovation is what Adam Smith called self-interestedness. At the heart of capitalism is selfishness. There's this famous quote: "It is not the benevolence of the butcher that gives us beef on the dinner table. It is the butcher trying to, pursue his own self-interest that gives us dinner at the table," right? A famous quote by Adam Smith. That the reason Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook is because he was trying to make money for himself. He wasn't trying to do good for the world. But in pursuing that money-making objective for himself, society also benefits. We're all on Facebook. Even this platform we are on today, if not for capitalism, maybe whoever founded it will not have had the incentive to found it, right? And we're enjoying the benefits now. We're having this conversation, but he's somewhere making his billions. And the argument capitalists make is that if you strip off this self-interested motive, a lot of people will go to bed. I mean, even if I make the money, the government will take it and give a lazy person, quote and unquote, who didn't do any work. So what is the incentive? So the balance we have to find is how to maintain this ability of capitalism to unlock innovation, but at the same time, stop the sharks from taking advantage of small players who are not able to succeed. And one final thing before I pass it on to the next person is the issue of wages. An economist, a famous French economist called Thomas Piketty, wrote a great book called Capital in the 21st Century. And he looked at the causes of inequalities through the years, and the role of capital allocation, And what he found essentially is that because of these asymmetries in the allocation of capital, it is widening the gap between the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-not. So economies are growing, but wages are shrinking. If you do an analysis of wages in Nigeria and in most countries of the world in capitalist system over the last 10 years, you will find that, some people are even earning less than they used to many years ago. When you factor in the effect of inflation, you find that they are earning even far less and they are doing more. So capitalism is rewarding the owners of capital. Remember, factors of production: labor, capital. Capital are the people who own the lands and they create the companies. They are getting huge rewards in terms of dividends, the value they get from investing their capital. But the people who provide the labor, which is another factor of production, wages are going down. So the capitalist system is rewarding capital more than it's rewarding labor. Wages are shrinking, and that's why you find that a lot of people are becoming impoverished in the midst of plenty.
That's true. Julia, I think you're muted.
You might be on mute, Julia.
Okay, you speak. I think you're... Oh, she's still muted. Well, while we wait for her, I think I just wanted to comment on, you mentioned how the difference, the rich are getting richer, poor are getting poorer, is something we all know. I feel like there's a lack of, it feels like there's no middle class left in Nigeria, where you're either rich or you're just one emergency away of completely sinking. And that's also the scary part of being in Nigeria or just trying to grow something, because you feel like, oh, I feel like I've gotten somewhere, but like, what if, oh, I have a big health scare, or oh, I have this emergency that I need to take care of, then it's right back I'm right back at the beginning. So like, it's very dark and dreary as a young person, just thinking of, can I actually grow something in this country? Is there hope for young people across Nigeria? And that's something I hope we would speak about, because I can't see any. I mean, a lot of young people still hustle, thankfully finding new ways to create wealth and grow something with it. But is there really hope? Or what's the next thing to turn to? Because I don't think it's not going to be the system that's helping us. It's not our government that's helping us. What's the next phase?
Yeah. The government wouldn't do it for us, but the government has a huge role to play in terms of regulation, in terms of preventing exploitation. As you rightly said, a lot of people are one illness away from poverty, even the top executives in organizations or people who have the so-called good jobs. And that is because if you look at the health insurance systems, even in America, you find that a lot of people's health insurance is linked to their jobs. So when you lose your job, you lose your health insurance. Yeah. So how can the government help drive reforms so that people who do not have jobs will still have some sort of health insurance? And I talked about coordinated market economies like Germany before. These are the systems you have there. People's health insurance is not linked to their jobs. You know, even if you lose your job, for a certain period, the government will be paying you about 60-70% of the salary you used to earn.
Sounds like the dream.
you get the next one. Yeah, it's true. You might say, oh, that's an advanced country. We might not be able to do that in Nigeria, but I think we can. It's about good governance. It's about fixing the economic system, but it's also about holding the private sector companies more accountable. For instance, with most private sector companies in Nigeria, they can, as I said before, they can lay you off whenever they want. The severance pay they give you after they lay you off is up to them. It's out of their benevolence. Of course, you will lose your health insurance. So it's almost like the game is rigged in favor of the employer, you know. And because of the high unemployment rate in Nigeria, you find that job seekers are in a poor bargaining position. You know, the banking industry, for instance, there used to be a time when entry-level positions in the banking industry were well paid, but increasingly they started outsourcing it so that they can pay less, and the payments or the salaries people earn keeps going down through the years. I was in the Nigerian banking industry many years ago, so I know how it was then. I know how it is now. Who is holding these banks accountable to ensure that they pay a fair wage? One of the banks in Nigeria, if they hire you as a new employee, they make you buy a brand new car and start deducting it from your salary, whether you like it or not. And I know somebody who is in this position.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which government agency will help ensure that things like this don't happen? Because it's sheer exploitation, and I will put it on contracts. Yeah, it's capitalist greed. So these are some of the dark sides of capitalism that government regulation would have helped stop. But the big problem about government regulation and the big reason why governments do not regulate is twofold. First is what you call regulatory capture, which means that the people who work in the regulatory agencies most times are former government employees. So today you are a government worker in whatever ministry. Tomorrow, for instance, you move to NAFDAC, then you can go back to government. So you find that it's the same people. And I use NAFDAC just as an example. I'm not saying it happens in NAFDAC.
I understand.
But it's not just in Nigeria. It's a big problem in most global economies and countries. The revolving door, you know, phenomenon where people move from government to the regulator side, and that doesn't happen. The second reason why regulation is not happening well is cronyism and the electoral systems. Most politicians depend on the private sector for campaign financing, right? So you want to run for office, you come to me, I give you 500 million or whatever it is. And then when you become a senator or whatever, you pretty much take orders from me.
Yeah.
So long as we have a system where if you're not a billionaire, you don't go get billions or millions from somebody before you do your job, you cannot win elections. And this is not just a problem in Nigeria again. I'm not singling out. Even in the United States, it's a big problem, campaign financing, you know. So we also have to find a way, electoral reforms, how people can run for office without being beholden to the custodians of capital, the people who give them this capital they're required to go into public office. These are some of the broader issues.
Okay, thank you. I think Juliet's back. Hi, Juliet.
Can anyone hear me at all?
Yes,
we can hear you now.
Oh dear. And I can't hear anybody.
We can hear you, Juliet.
I also see Ozioma on the
fine.
call.
There's nothing wrong. It's just, I don't know. It's ridiculous. Ozioma is having the same problems. Okay, so, well, if you can hear me, Shekinah, I'll just let you. Are you able to hear Ozioma also?
No.
No.
No. Oh dear. Oh dear. This is not nice. Because he has so much. He's sending me all the messages on what he needs to say, and he can't speak. It's very sad. Okay, Shekinah, I'm going to leave you with Osita to let me see if there are any questions in the question box. Okay, so I'm going to leave you two to continue the conversation. I'm going to log out and I'm going to log back in. Is that okay? Because I can't hear anything.
Okay, that works.
Okay.
I'm just going to log out and I'm going to log back in. 1 minute.
Okay, so talking off of what we've been discussing, like for me, the biggest things is like, okay, so as a young person, we know that okay, this is the reality of Nigeria. This is the struggles we have. So trying to just grow wealth and just create some business or whatever it is, what advice would you have for a young person in Nigeria trying to, I don't know, whether, because it feels like even if you want to get a job, most people still have business on the side because we know that even the wages you're getting, even for all those so-called companies that they pay well, it's not much, especially based on the environment. Even like inflation today with food prices and all of that, or just even trying to get something, it's almost impossible. Most people have jobs on the side or have something on the side, trying to just grow, the hustle is real, basically. So as a young person in Nigeria, what can we look towards? I know there are a couple I know some banks or so are doing more private loans and stuff like that for young people in certain industries and things like that people can tap into. I thought that was cool that there have been some private sectors making that possible. Well, is there anything else that young people in Nigeria can look towards in just trying to grow wealth or create something today?
Yeah, thanks for that question. It's a fantastic one, because we can keep waiting for the macro reforms to happen. We don't know when that will come.
It doesn't feel like it's going to happen in my generation.
Yeah. But question is, how can people do even while we wait for these macro reforms?
Right.
I would say that one of the benefits of the age in which we live is that we are living in an information civilization. The way you had the Industrial Revolution and the invention of cars and steam engine, we have the information revolution, which has brought things like the internet. Information is more accessible. Most young people are on the internet and so forth. You are able to be in your home and do research in whatever area, whether it be technology. There are lots of free courses in business, but also in tech, online. I think there's a lot young people can gain from being alive in this age where you just have so much information at your fingertips, and they should take advantage of them. If you're starting a business, for instance, and you want to drive cost reduction, you want to do digital marketing and so forth, there are loads of resources, a lot of them free online, you can benefit from, that can help you compete. Even in terms of how to access funds, it remains a big problem in Nigeria, because the small players, even when they want to access these funds, they are at astronomically high interest rates. But a lot of foreign investors and venture capitalists are beginning to take interest in Nigeria. So you need to...
We've had some good success stories from those.
Yeah. Kenya has almost exploded. It's almost become like a startup hub in Africa. A lot of progress in Accra, Ghana as well. But people are turning to Nigeria as well. A lot of tech jobs will be created in the future. So most entrepreneurs should begin to look into those areas. It will be a blessing, but there might be a dark side in terms of other sectors that are going to lose jobs. But the big question to a young person in Nigeria or in any part of the world, not just the entrepreneurs, but everyone, is what are you doing to position yourself for this age of technological domination,
revolution, I guess.
This digital age. Yeah, how are you positioning yourself? What skills are you getting? Or are you the famous book, Who Moved My Cheese? The time to begin to prepare yourself for change is not when the change strikes. So if you're a marketer, are you equipping yourself with the skills you need in the area of digital marketing? Do you understand data and analytics? Everybody doesn't have to write codes, and but but in some way, in some dimensions, the digital revolution, the digitalization phenomenon is going to affect the jobs that are created in the future, and we should all be asking ourselves how we are positioning ourselves for this new world.
Thank you for that. Thank you. It makes a lot of sense. Juliet, are you back? I see you again.
Juliet, can you hear us? I think they are still...
Because it's already 5:54. I wish we got to hear from Ozioma.
Guys, can anybody hear me?
Yes.
If you can't, you're going to have to sit this one out, because I can't hear nothing.
We can hear you. Let me send us a text.
About. I can't hear me. I can't hear me.
Yes, we can.
You guys, in 2 minutes, PT, I really wanted to can't. Now we can't. It's very sad.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah.
So she kind of.
Yeah, I would have loved to hear.
To do the closing, please.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Right. You can share your closing thoughts. I'll share mine, and then we wrap it up.
I mean, I guess for me, in the end, I just really wish we have an economy or society or systems in Nigeria where, as a young person in Nigeria, I can grow wealth and be able to earn more than my parents, and be able to provide for my parents in their old age, because it feels like that's a dream that's increasingly shrinking in Nigeria. Where as a young person, I can grow and become something and be able to give back to my community or give back to my family. So I guess I'm thankful. It's not as dark as I started, because coming into this call, there's a lot of fire burning. as a young person, but understanding that, well, this is our current context. I don't think any change is going to happen anytime soon, really, especially understanding the government that we have and how slow things are going. But then, as we said, it's an age of digital revolution, really, where I don't have to wait until things get better around me. I can really tap into what's out there to really create something. So I guess in the end, I'm not saying no to capitalism, but I'm just saying it's failed me. But I'm saying yes to technology and the internet. So I guess that's my closing.
Okay, so thanks for that, Shekinah. My parting shot to everyone listening is for you not to lose hope in capitalism. A lot of the value that has been created in the world over the past decades, we owe it to capitalism. A lot of countries have also tried the alternative. Don't forget that socialism has also been tried, and we've seen how it went in countries like Venezuela, but also in Latin America, but also in China. You can research the Great Leap Forward, when one Chinese premier decided to try socialism on a large scale. It ended in famine that killed millions of Chinese. Before China, which used to be full-blown socialism, has started moving gradually in the capitalist direction. It's happened even within two similar countries. Look at North and South Korea. Up north, what they practice is socialism. Down south, they're practicing capitalism, and we've seen how wealth has been created in that country. Today, we all use Samsung and so forth. They've become big exporters to the world and created a lot of wealth, pulled a lot of people out of poverty. China as well. After their transition to capitalism, millions and millions, if not millions and millions of people were pulled out of poverty, in such a short time. Capitalism has also unlocked tremendous innovation. A lot of the things we take for granted today, Snapchat, Facebook, Google, and all of that, GPS, we owe it to the ingenuity and innovation coming as a result of capitalists, of the capitalists and capitalism. So there's a lot of merit in it. Let's not throw the baby away with the bathwater. What we need is to ensure that we do not allow this dark side of capitalism, this greedy capitalism where sharks are making billions, are not paying their fair share of taxes, and so forth. We shouldn't allow it to continue. We should ensure that the government regulates the companies well, and we should also pay attention to the intersections. There's intersectionality when you talk about capitalism. For instance, we always say, oh, a lot of people, billionaires take all the wealth and the majority is poor. But if you look at that majority poor, everybody is not poor at the same level. Some are still better than others. Men and women are not poor at the same level. Oxfam did an analysis of the number of hours that women spend giving care to loved ones for free. Is billions, if not trillions of hours that you have women, because of the gender roles. Is the woman that will do all the chores, look after the baby, clean the house, unpaid labor, which have no economic value, while the men are out making millions. Should men begin to support more? So there's also the gender dimensions, the intersectionalities. It's not a simple question of capitalism or socialism, take one. It's about trying to create a kinder, gentler version of capitalism that doesn't leave a lot of people behind and make a few people billionaires.
Okay, thank you so much for that. It's been, I guess I'll close out since Juliet's gone. Thank you everyone for listening in. We had a couple comments. Thank you guys for that. It was a great session. I feel like I learned a lot. I went into this with very dark thoughts, but at least there's a ray of hope, hopefully, for everyone out there and all the young people out there listening in into the session. So I hope we have a wonderful day. I guess that's my closing for everyone. I really wish we could have
everyone. Thanks for listening.
Yes. So,
and watching.
Have a great evening, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, have a good evening. Bye.